Boy, it's getting bright here. The sun is shining brightly, and it's about to be getting dark. I'm gonna put up a screen or something. Can't see a damn thing. All right, so I'm just getting here ready. Yeah, I've been working with Hermes a little bit. Here I am. Hello, hello. Looking good. There we are. Oh, hello. All right. What are we looking at here? This is Hermes, one of the back ends of Hermes. That's the web dashboard that comes with it. The design leaves a bit to be desired. I could definitely do an overhaul on this thing, and I might. But in the meantime, you can decide which models you want to use, and I've been picking through a few. I decided on cheaper model as my kind of main model. It doesn't cost a lot, so if it goes a little crazy, it only costs me 20 cents per like giant 100K token request or whatever. So it's not too bad. It doesn't get too out of control, but those 20 cents will add up after a while. So I got to be a little careful. That's 1,000, requests that I can kind of afford on that level. So I kind of am mixing and matching at the moment. I'm trying to find models that will work well for searching the sessions. So I kind of need one that actually has, not this one probably. I probably should swap this. Use one of the 1 trillion, something with a large context that does well and has good fidelity at reproduction. I'm looking at, when I need to read Skills Hub, I actually am using Haiku, and then the curator, which is a little more strict about later, like your usage review, I'm using Sonnet. I could use something more fancy. And then I still have something silly like free for just generating titles. So that's fine. I might even use a small local model for that kind of thing if I can find something that loads quickly and maybe is always loaded and just picks up a couple gigs or whatever. Then you get something like Nematron for session search. So I'm sort of probably going to pull that out. But DeepSeek for V4 Pro on OpenRouter, not too expensive. So fine. Meanwhile, Xcode. MCP, yeah, I've been playing with the MCP stuff a little bit. In my stream yesterday, which was a little bit scattered and out of control. I wouldn't say out of control. I had a point where I forgot that I had the screen off, so I was like, oh, talking about all this stuff, and it wasn't on screen. I had to go back over it. Hate doing that, so of course I didn't go over it as well. But effectively, I'm taking this old this is actually my new FretPet code, and I have this old FretPet code. And my plan is to use LLMs for kind of what they're really good at, which is just direct translation. Yes, come on. Which is more or less direct translation from one thing to another. You show it something, you say, this is what I want. And the more explicit you are about it, the more you'll get it. And of course, if I can give it, a whole blob of code, it can basically take that and one-to-one take what I've done, which is a lot of OpenGL crap in here. And it can ignore a lot of the stuff I've done with that and just throw it out and be like, well, you want to draw an image? Well, we got one call. Throw all your OpenGL crap out. Make texture with image file. We don't need that. Just pull it in, draw it. No problem. It's already a PNG. No problem. So there's going to be a whole lot of that kind of thing where I'm going to have the AI review with me each piece of the code and say, okay, how do we convert this old C++ code written for Carbon libraries, or Cocoa maybe even. I don't think it was Cocoa. It was probably Carbon. But I have I have my own string class, which is crap. So I don't even want to look at that. I'm going to basically have it eliminate so much of what this code will not be needed. These days you have so many options for building UI. I could just use a pre-existing UI library, maybe even do something with this in JavaScript and React. Is kind of the big plan. But in the long run, be able to repurpose this code over and over. And it's a cool app. It's just basically take guitar chords and make them effectively sequenceable. And I know there are other ones out there now that are maybe even inspired by FretPet, because it has been around for gosh, 30 years at this point. So yeah, someone might have picked it up and been like, I could do that in modern age. Well, I guess I'm going to be the one to do it. It's kind of more literally. I'm going to take the code, which, by the way, has been sitting up there on GitHub untouched, unobserved, unstarred, uncared for, just waiting for someone to come along and be like, I'll port it. Well, now I have robots, so screw you all. I'm going to port it myself. Haha. So that's the plan. So I've got these sitting around, and I've started again. I want to go back to Hermes agent. Well, not that one. The other one, dashboard, the green one. On here, besides the models that I've been picking and choosing through to like do different things. And right now, if I look at my usage, you can see that I have spent another $1 today. About, I go to like my last hour. You can see my recent requests and my token costs. So here's my spend over the last hour. Not a big deal, a couple $1.50. For mostly, like if you've got a supervisor, it's going to be looking at high level instructions, simple language. Usually they'll pull in skills to use to do stuff, but it may not need to pull in skills to comprehend or make a plan unless there's a planning skill. But in general, what you generally do is you do things in phases in order to lessen the amount of work that the next phase has to do. So you know how it goes. It's the same as in managing any project. The more you prepare up front, the less work presumably you'll do on the back end. I've always written code in a very haphazard, like improvisational way. First you build a loop, and then you sort of hang things off that loop. You build some kind of UI, and then you build around that and try to follow through on the idea, keeping things consistent, and you build what you build. And with FretPet, I built something that was pretty cool, has a lot of neat things going on with it. If you've seen it, I can run the old versions to demonstrate it for you, I guess, in some subject, but I didn't prepare with like emulators or anything. I may have a video about it somewhere on YouTube about FretPet, but also like it was like macOS 7 was when I originally wrote it, so there's like a macOS 7 version, macOS all the way up to 9, and then macOS 10 versions later in like 2003. I was like, time to port that over. So I was all into OpenGL at the time, so I was happy to dive into OpenGL and do my rendering that way with some things. I don't know why I chose to do it that way. There are definitely other ways, but I think probably because I thought it was more optimal to just go straight. But most of it, I think it was Quartz Composer had come along at that time, and I was just starting to do that, and what can I say? It was a hassle. So bringing in something like this, a little AI to help me, especially with, I keep hammering on this, but like they need good documentation. And if you guys have followed Apple like coding tools and Xcode and their documentation, their APIs, their human interface guidelines, like from the start, their documentation is second to none as far as like clarity, concision, like pointing out like what things are deprecated exactly when, what they're replaced with, all that stuff is like really well documented. And the tools in Xcode for searching the documentation, I presume, are geared towards following those breadcrumbs to the headers, and they show you what's deprecated and why. Hopefully they give you some more information. But in general, all that help is there. It's built into Xcode. And so it can kind of guide you towards porting some old thing to some new thing. If you've waited as long as I have, which is like effectively 10 years since I ported this thing, I think it's about 12 years now, since I last touched the code, like it's solid, it works. There's things that I added, like I got in like Sunbox export and better MIDI control and stuff like that. So all that stuff is in there. Now I just need to bring it over to the modern APIs. And of course, all the stuff that was there is still there, except I was using QuickTime. Now you use AV Kit or something like that. And there's new options. So I just need to basically swap out my old framework, Cocoa. I'll probably still use that. Audio Toolbox. Yeah, a lot of this stuff I'll be bringing in. QuickTime, as you can see, it's red. It's gone. It's not even in the OS anymore. Screw you. You have to use AV Kit or something like that now. So get used to it. I'm excited for the porting project of this, because it leads directly into what's going to happen with Marlin, which is a bigger project with more people with a vested interest in the outcome. So with that one, we want to have the next generation be more maintainable and have faster iteration and not run into the kinds of problems of maintenance that we've had with this old crufty code base that we've been bolting things onto for so long. As you know, feature creep is a problem in software, and it's just one of those problems that we have to face as developers all the time. So I highly recommend, in general, using the tools available to pull out the documentation that you need to get things moving forward, learn the new ways, and take advantage of all the best principles of software, do testing and all that kind of thing. And now, that's the cool part, is now AI, these tools, agents, they allow us to apply all the best practices that we've been too lazy or too, not necessarily lazy, but it just takes 3 times as much time to do all the tests and then run the tests and do all the things. Now you can kind of automate a lot of that. I haven't even considered that for this code. Like, how would I, like, do I want to have this be, I want to say ported, but I guess the word is migrated, or refactored in place, I guess, or advanced in place. I do not want it to be ported or advanced or taken to the next level in place. I'm going to basically build it into the new project empty framework project. And so you can see this already runs, this empty framework that I built starting in 2012. God, it's been so long. So I built this very basically I was going to make this the new FretPet. So it's going to be, all the windows were going to behave like windows behave now, with like they're magnetic and they stick to each other. As you can see, I think I had to actually implement that. Now you don't have to, probably. There's a document which hides behind palettes. You hit tab and they're supposed to disappear. I don't have that working yet. But the main thing I wanted was to have like resizing and dynamic palettes. So you could I want to work with just this now. And then you could put that away and you could work with, or shrink it or whatever. And then work with your circle palette and so on. So it would be the same app effectively that I used to have, but it would just be modernized. And the thing is, when you click off of an app like this, actually I hide everything. When you click off an app like this without the finder there, it just hides the other windows or the other palettes. They all need to be implemented. All of them there's things in them that need to be done. I think the dynamic resizing of the chord palette better and so on, because it's kind of crap. Like if you watch the dynamic resizing, it's okay. The font size is a little bit uneven. It's fine, but I could do better. So overall, the idea is, and why do you need to resize this? Stuff like that. And again, the idea is eventually to put it all into one window and unify it like you do in modern interfaces, and make this like more of like classic mode. I'd like to kind of retain this, but also have these pieces be decomposable, so I can pull this palette out here that has, these tones in it or whatever, and put them into window, which I've already done for another thing called chord calc, which I also have partially working, but it needs updates for all the new screen sizes of all our devices. So I can put these out and get them back into the App Store, which will be nice, and it'll help mitigate some of the loss of funding I've had for Marlin. Like, I could be out there begging for Marlin funding, but I'd rather just use my skills to do what I can to make things better in my little world of software, and just have a few products out there. And again, this is a learning process. Like, I would sit down and do all this stuff by hand as a coder all day long, and I'd love to do so, but it just it's a lot of typing and all that, and just other things going on as I'm managing this project. So can I get these assistants to help me with that? And so far I'm just, as you see on the Hermes dashboard, I was going to show you that what I'm doing with Kanban is right now it's got an in progress and a bunch of done. But if I zoom up, you can see what it's doing is ingesting API docs into the wiki. So if you're using the Carpathy concept of a wiki, like, does it work for code is the question. And I have a question about code too, which I've been thinking about since I got out of the shower today. And it comes down to this, is why are we using text files for our code now when, with LLMs, when the fair thing to do would be immediately have the LLM chop it all up into functions, organize that stuff into a database, and then make it searchable in a much more ready way so that everything is interlinked. Cells interlinked, you know what I'm saying? Cells interlinked in the database so that they can find what it's trying to find more easily, instead of chopping through text files, which are made for humans. We can still see the code. I think we could have a way to view it in a text file, but it would be like there'd be little lines in between. This is one, field in a database, and this next part is another field in the database. So when you're editing this, it's being saved in one database entry table field, for that particular thing. And then, then you can decompose them down into like your database can then have the name of the function, the class of the function, all that stuff can be decomposed. And of course, effectively what I'm talking about is doing something like taking the intermediate representation sort of that say LLVM would do, and pulling some of that out and using some of that as your metadata on all the functions that you're then scraping out and putting into the database in textual form. You still maintain the code as text, of course, but the cool thing is you can also then have the code, you can have the comments about the code in another field you can have that are not necessarily mixed with the code. So it can pull it out when it needs it. You can have comments about each line of the code, again, decomposed into this database. All that kind of stuff can be decomposed in ways that are better for working with code. An LLM wiki is an interesting way of, like, what I'm doing really here is just getting the APIs out that I already have. And then the point is to just, here's the shape of the thing and here's how it's currently built. These are the interdependencies of things. A chord is a entity, is a thing that can be in a document, blah, blah, blah. So you have all these different things that can be, I don't know why it keeps asking me to connect code. Bye, Xcode. Let's put it away. Let's stop our tasks and put it away. I don't need that. Open right now. So anyway, the concept though is that obviously a lot of our coding tools already do some of that. They will look through your code as it is in situation and do some kind of indexing on it. And that indexing effectively gives it the same thing. But that index constantly gets a little out of date, I would imagine. As you say, expand the length of a function, now it no longer occupies this part of the file. Maybe you move it, now it occupies another file. Is it going to be maintaining that index all the time as you're moving things around? Fine if it is. Xcode runs LLVM in the background to keep track of where things are at. So I think that's a good approach. But if we can build our own and sort of and make it a tool, a MCP tool, for example, that is specifically geared at code as a thing unto itself, not the project, but understanding the whole thing that it's building it in a format that isn't the human code format, but still accessible to the human through the database viewer that is still looking at things in textual form, allowing you to edit them in textual form, and so on. So the real tricky part isn't, like, the cool thing is you have tools like LLVM that already do a lot of the work of decomposing and understanding and parsing the code that is not broken, and getting metadata out of it and getting information out of it, and having, say, a half compiled version of your code all ready to go in an inter-representation form. So cool, very cool. And to the extent that we can have our LLMs work with these representations, it's better. You want, effectively what you want is something where an LLM can simply look at a function signature, look at the description of what it does, what it returns, and doesn't need to look any more at it if all it needs to know is, like, this is a thing I'm calling from somewhere else. It doesn't need to know the details of what's going on inside the function any more than any of us do. The whole idea was the black box was the idea in the first place. You have functions or black boxes. The interface is the function, is the program, and so on. Like, the program inside of the functions is less important than the interface. So, and the API and so on. So interestingly, though, if you do work with LLMs, they can only work with so much at a time, but you can give them that high level overview to work with. They're great at working with ideas at the high level because it's just, spitballing. So, you can very much work with that. You can rearrange the order in which you might do things. Am I going to make this loop inside of that, or vice versa? All that kind of stuff. You can make those decisions at a high level. And then you can do the same at each subunit. You can make these high level decisions, describe them in language, in natural language. And to the extent that you can describe them in natural language, they can be understood and they're expressible, then they can be expressed in the form of code. Hard part comes down to, like, how much do you decompose each of those down into smaller and smaller description. And I think ultimately you should have the thing break it all down into pure language before it ever touches or even writes lines of code. On the other hand, sometimes code is the most concise and clear way to express an idea. And so I think a little of both, it should have both, this is what this should be doing, and you should have the snippet of code that does it, whether it's a function or not a function, which opens up the possibility again of these AIs don't have to look at everything in terms of functions anymore, or even functional units. If it wants to do a unit test on a piece of a function, it doesn't have to break it out with a function signature, with references or whatever, and make it an inline, and then test it that way. And then you leave your code in this really weirdly decomposed form for the purpose of the AI. It can just say, oh, this part of this function is now in this field in a database, and when you go to edit that part of the function, it's got lines around it that say this is yet another field in the database that is a decomposed thing. And you could imagine that it has a faux signature, it's a little lambda or whatever. So you can imagine decomposing things down into even subfunctions down even to lines. And then you can reuse those idioms if you are good with that. You can take all the stuff that you've decomposed of your code. You have all that meta overview of your entire project in a database. Now you have the ability to scan through it at all kinds of different high and mid and low level ways, and really decompose the whole thing, or refactor the whole thing if you decide, by simply going through a process which now is much more orderly. You can start at the low level. Okay, I need to build this up in Python. Now I'm going to need a Python function that does this. Is there one that exists? A library? Yes, use that. So then it goes and it slowly builds up all the utilities, all the leaf functions, as it were, that are like the final things that all the function calls, the things that never call anything else. They just get called. I guess that's what you call a leaf function. So effectively, maybe they call into the OS or something, but they do something that is, in your program, it doesn't call anything else. So they are effectively the endpoints of all your logic. And those things can be mapped out. You have maps already of how things operate, say, in terms of their inheritance. You have how things map out in terms of their, let's see how this is going. You have in terms of their calling tree, and how things call each other. You have things mapped out in terms of what things contain other things, like, is this thing a class that mixes two classes or adds a member? What are the members of this class? What are the data members? What are the methods of this class? Does it share, is it a subclass? All those kinds of things can be brought in and expressed in plain, and they kind of need to be expressed both in plain language and with the pointers to the other things they relate to, also somewhat in plain language, so that the agent, when it goes through your code to discuss, like, oh, how does this work, it can very readily just say, oh, this calls that, which calls this, and then when it gets there, it looks at the details and says, these are the details of that thing. And it can do it all in a way which isn't scouring through text files that you've edited over the last couple of weeks, and this is the first time you've decided to ask this kind of question. It'll already have kind of a lot of these answers prepared. The kinds of questions, of course, you're going to ask about your code, like how, what happens what is the call chain on this? What are the dependencies? What is where is the real bottleneck in my program? What is where are the places where I need to, rethink my approach? What happens if I replace this whole, oh, look, more idiots coming into my course. Yeah, never click these people. Remember this name. Are you? And remember they suck. And tell all your friends that they suck. They're just out here to remind everyone that they suck. Anyway, so we have yeah, this thing is now ingesting. It seems to be in process. I don't know what kind of walls I've hit. Last time I was using it, I hit a lot of API limits. And then like I also got getting these keyboard interrupts. I don't know if this is a new thing, but I'm actually getting like actual like errors in Hermes. So I hope those are being fixed. I went searching in the issues and I didn't see them listed, but they're not affecting the outcome. They're just hassle. They slow things down. It has to redo or stop and continue. It's a big mess. So I hope they will fix that in Hermes. And I don't think it's due to anything that I've plugged in. I haven't added plugins, just skills. Hold on a second. This light is getting crazy. Give me a moment. This is insane. Look at this. Beautiful. Also, we have very loud doves out here. It's what y'all might call pigeons. Oh, God. It's like 90 something today, too. Beautiful day. Lovely. Just about 90 Fahrenheit, which I guess brings us into the close to 40 in the Celsius range. I'm going to go with, let's call it 34. So, hey, hello. Anyway, this is doing pretty well. So this is your Kanban. So it's basically, I'm not like running. Obviously, I'm not running a marathon thing session or whatever. This has been taking a while. What am I trying to say? I'm not trying to rush this. I was just trying to like experiment with this to see, okay, how much can I do with say free tokens? And I think I discussed that in my last stream. What can I do to get this work done without spending an arm and a leg? And I think I'm settling on using models that are not expensive is basically one of the ways to go. If you can get models that are reliable for certain things that don't cost an arm and a leg, go with those. Use the connect to your services and use them, because if your local models might do okay, they're slow, they're hot. I was running, actually got OMLX yesterday, and if you haven't seen OMLX, yet another way to run models on the Mac. So when you're running a model, you're not just running the model, you're actually using a runner that reads the model's data, does all kinds of fancy things with it, calls a bunch of Python functions or whatever else, or maybe it's built in some other way. It's C++, that's why people like Llama C++. I've been using mostly LM Studio, Allama, and now OMLX is here. So I'm using those a lot. Put them over here, since I do put them at the end. And Allama is kind of like falling by the wayside. The one thing I like about it, and I think it's similar with OMLX, is you can set it to unload the model after a short period of time, and basically OMLX seems to keep the model unloaded most of the time unless it's using it. And also, it didn't use, I found that it definitely did save on memory usage, but boy, it definitely also pegged the GPU to the top, which is, I guess, what you want. You want it to be using all the machine's power as it can while it's doing its processing. But it definitely was running hot, and it still wasn't, it wasn't like it's just twice as fast or anything. It was a little faster, possibly. I haven't done a definitive, objective measurement. But let's see where we're at with my last hour of analytics data. Okay, so here we are with the last hour. And now you can see I've spent $2.29 in this hour, mostly on DeepSeek, and in mostly dribs and drabs, 10 cents, 8 cents, 4, 16, 30 cents. Most expensive hit, and by the way, I don't know why this time zone is all off, but there it is, 46 cents. So yeah, if you're hitting it, and you're hitting it. And this is the thing, your requests get progressively larger. You can see when you're using a harness, you're going to start out small, but they're going to get progressively larger. The same with your chat. As it gives you answers, it's going to get larger. And this is the thing, is like, if you're paying for input, watch your model provider's behavior, because you'll notice that sometimes, like, you just want a short answer. That's ultimately, we just want, at first we just want, like, give me the lowdown, just give me the basic answer, don't give me a big freaking essay that I have to read. But most of these services give you a big essay that you have to read. And then, if, I guess with ChatGPT, I guess, if you're using the free service, well, it's on them. But if you're using services and, like, the models are just that way, like, they're basically getting kind of ripped off, because you want to. I think you ultimately want to get progressively closer to the knowledge you want, but you want to start out with, like, not all the details right away. Work towards the details. The same goes with, again, when I'm talking about working with these tools to get your code ingested, and then work with these tools to refactor your code. Like, they're it's like, you can get a lot done with free tokens, but if you want quality, you're going to have to spend a little bit. And ultimately, I'm going to go, now that I've done this, I probably will use something like Sonnet, go over the quality of it and clean it up. But again, once you've loaded it into, ingested it this way, like, is that the most useful form? I don't think so. It'll help it sort of navigate a little bit, but I think having a tool where it really, really has the code decomposed into a database is the way to go. And I think that building that out would be a good project. So I may take a stab at that. Someone's probably, like, smarter than me, is probably going to hit it much harder and do a better job. But I'm going to try and sort of look at that concept, and just have, like, because you have to build up tooling for it. That's kind of the issue. Now it's turned red, which means, I guess, it's stuck or something is going on. So I can check that. See what's going on. Oh, wait, yep, keyboard interrupt. Another freaking keyboard interrupt. What is going on? I think it's usually during prepare write file. Let's see when to do it before. There's another one. Preparing to do. That's during preparing. So I think the preparing. Wait. Yeah, that's fine. Hold on. Oh, there's another one. Preparing write file. Okay. So I don't know. Maybe my choice of model for this particular thing, because this allows you to, again, choose. You can choose auxiliary models to do different things. So I think I'm looking at, maybe the tool that does approval? No. I think that would just be DeepSeek v4 doing approval, but I think I ran into this before I had that. And even so, this isn't the way to handle it. Like, it shouldn't just, crash the session. I don't know if it's crashing the session, but it's definitely screwing it up. Like, here's one, 16 minutes. So it's been going for 16 minutes at least. But yeah, this bloody red, that just means that it's something screwed up. I got another message to look at. But it manages to, usually after these, it still manages to keep crashing forward. And you can see it's reloaded and reinitialized the agent. Compression model is ring free. Make this permanent, edit YAML either. Oh, I need a larger compression model. So I don't know. It's got 1 trillion. Oh, that's the number of parameters, not necessarily context. What was I thinking? Hold on. I got to set a better model for compression, clearly. Even so, I don't know if that's the issue. But let me see. This one? Okay. Change it. So a compression model just needs a large context. And generally speaking, most models these days do have a pretty good sized context. But I know that one of the things in this process is I keep having to go back to OpenRouter, look at the models, sort of like figure out what's the context. How do I figure out I sort by context size. Yes, you can go high to low. So there you go. But can I also do by price, at the same time? So Grok 4.2, big context. clearly, I just need something that's mid-size context, not too expensive, and not a model that I hate. So I don't know, pick a Mistral model. These are nice. They're a bit expensive if you're me. But here's some cheaper ones. Llama can probably do that sort of thing. But again, 128K is kind of minimum, but I think I need I want to go for 240K to 256K. There's a 200K context. I could go with Minimax. Let's see, it's a pretty cheap one. How about Minimax M2? There's a problem though, is that the interface doesn't give you a way to do it, so you have to go and edit the config YAML, and then find your Ling. It's even in there. I don't even know where it is. So let me see. It tells me that, sorry, it tells me that Ling is one of my models or something. What is it? Oh, Ring. Where's Ring? There actually is a model called Ling and Ring. So there's Ring, and you can see it's compression. So, okay, so now I want to change this to something else that has a bigger context. So the way we do that now is we go here. Pick a model, any model, something free. But why not Minimax M25 free? Throw that in there. It's for programming. Good for that. I may bring it in for some other uses actually. And if you don't mind spending a little, but again, it's got the large context. 197K, good enough size. Some of these have larger ones. Haiku, again, you can go to the old Haiku models. They're not bad. They're also pretty cheap, especially Claude 3. 3.5 suddenly jumps up to $4 on output. Some of these also, they have caching, so you have to kind of consider that. But I don't know if I don't not notice them mentioning their caching. I know that Claude and some others have caching, but they just simply don't say. And it's usually 1/10 of the cost of the non-cache. About typical. So Haiku 4.5, I could pick that, whatever. 200K context, let's keep going. GLM, actually, I like GLM 4.7 Flash. Let's go with that. I don't like it. So we'll just paste in that. Now if we go back to our interface and there's a refresh, you get, there it is, GLM 4.7 Flash. So you can change these things. You have to edit the config file directly. So again, vision model, what would I use for vision? I'm not even sure, but I haven't had to use it yet. Not the kind of thing I'm testing at this point, but I will be at some point with FretPet probably. Then Skills Hub, I'm using Haiku, but I could pick something maybe, I don't know, just as good for that sort of thing, as it were. And again, I like GLM, maybe that GLM is fine for this sort of thing, Skills Hub. Again, it's pretty cheap, 40 cents on output, so 1/10 the cost of its 5 turbo version. On the other hand, turbo, faster, does translation, maybe better. Also, you've got later versions, 4.6 GLM, people like it. Actually, I like 4.7 locally. It's been pretty good, but again, hot, slow, I need faster stuff. I'm waiting for the models to gain some magic technology that makes them run fast and take no memory, but I'm not counting on it. These also, Kimi, pretty cheap. People like Kimi, people like DeepSeek. I picked DeepSeek because the cost is good, the quality is good. You now have also Nematron is another option. So, and it has a large context. So that may just be, I'm using it already for the session search because you need to be able to handle a large context. So I think that's a good choice. It's also got a small, it doesn't activate a lot, so it's probably, not breaking the bank for these guys either. It's only activating a few parameters. Couple, of course they're larger than some models, but still. Oh, you got Gemma. Gemma is actually a good value, and I've noticed. And you have options. You have 31B, 26B, similar to the Quen models, similar size. 27B. I have found that the 27B model on my computer is runs well, but it is definitely, again, it's hot and slow, but it's faster than some stuff. I was really into the smaller models when I was just screwing around. Now I want quality, and it's especially for code or touching processes and coming up with workflows or defining language for a manual or a website, I definitely want better models for building those initial things out. I will definitely adjust the language a lot. Like I'm going to humanize it. You're not going to find a bunch of M dashes and unnecessary emojis all over Marlon's website. I hope as I do this, as I build out the new website, it'll be cleaner. Then we have Quen Creek Loader Flash. You got your Sonnet. So at this point you're up into 15 million, $15 per million, but you have a large context and you're expecting good quality. Sonnet's like all over the place as far as things it's suitable for. You can see these are very broad models. They're very good at a lot of things, or at least they claim to be. I don't know who votes on these things, but also you've got of course, your Opus. They get expensive, but the quality is second to none with a lot of these models. But right now, I think from what I've heard, Gemini Flashlight, not that one, but 1 point something is one of the better values right now. So if you're using something like Flashlight Preview, it's got a huge context, and again, it's like not expensive. So again, if I'm going to use it for something, I would maybe use it for web extraction, or I don't know, something like that. How about what I use it for? Maybe for web extraction. I'll go with, let's see, was there something? Curator. I'm using Sonnet for a curator. The flush memories, maybe for flushing memories, I could throw it in there. Flashlight. I don't do that very often, but it's one of the things I could do. And then for MCP, why not throw that in, or something cheaper? I'll probably go with something free for that kind of thing for MCP. I don't know why. I mean, choosing MCP is kind of, you need something that's kind of understands that it's being instructed. So instruction models that know that they're being instructed are good. Again, I think I've had also with certain models, like they don't necessarily do calling of tools quite correctly. You have to be a little cautious with certain older models that aren't necessarily aimed at tool calling, even though they'll claim to be able to and they'll try to. Sometimes they'll hallucinate it or just put out crap. So you have to watch that. And then I haven't figured out a good way to mark the models I trust, because I keep coming back to them and be like, oh, I should try this one again, and then like, oh right, that's the one that just like completely loses it when it comes to tool calls. Whoops. Let's see again. Cost. I'm looking at cost now. But yeah, cost versus size. So again, if I need a large context, I don't know. I might go with something like Mistral, generally speaking, or even Grok Code Fast 1. Good. It's actually a good deal. Sticking around for another week. I think I would use this more for code stuff. But I have found it pretty good in Xcode when I was screwing around with that. So let's try make that the model we use for MCP. This model. Grok Code Fast 1. So there you go, a big mess of models, and we'll see how they do. I'm kind of using them all in a haphazard way right now, and I'll probably settle on a few that I like. If we refresh, there we go, our new models are now listed. So here we are. We're now using i3 Preview Free for title generation. It's free. We're using curation. We're using a model we trust for MCP. Should say that we're using something else. Let's check. There we go. Get our reload. We should be using. Oh, it still says use main model for MCP. Did it not pick it up? It should have picked it up. Provider. Oh, open router in there. That's why. It needs to not say auto. Here we go. Good. Somebody was probably noticing that and pointing it out in the chat. Sorry. All right. Here we go. So now if we refresh this baby, we get, there we go, Grok. And title gen and for, yeah, GLM for compression. And I'm not using web extraction right now. We'll get there much. So we'll something. But again, I'm going to be using local models for a lot of these things too. The tricky part is I need to like basically set up profiles based on this. Create a profile with these particular agents here, which I will do now. I'm going to call this, we'll just call it code ingestion or something. The model I'm using, because this is what I'm doing for this stuff right now, code ingestion. And I guess it does allow me to put spaces in here. Underscore, maybe it doesn't need underscore. And we create clone from default. Is that what I'm using right at this moment? Believe I am. DeepSeek V4 Pro. It looks like it. Let's create it. Boom. Now we've got a new profile. It's called code ingestion, and we'll come back to it later. We want to look at our Kanban, see how we're going. It says right now we got a gateway is running. We got our little guy stuck again, or at least complained once more. I don't know if it resets after visiting, but it looks like, yeah, doing preparing write file now. So we should expect another keyboard error or whatever, keyboard interrupt for some reason, error. Maybe switching the model will help avoid that. I think we can hope so. So far, I don't see going back, like it hasn't happened recently. So there it is. Last time was, I don't know, back here. So it's gone on since then to do a bunch of stuff. Looks like, I know it looks like errors, but it's actually notes. Hopefully it's all correct. And there we go. Now it's writing the file. So once it's done with this part, it should be good. I don't know why it's still red. I don't know how to like make it not be red. Select for bulk actions. That's interesting. You can, oh, I think this means you can like have things go in parallel. If they're checked off, they can go in parallel. So I may have wanted to do that before, but screw it. Like this one could probably go in parallel now that I'm paying for my tokens. But I'm still rate limited, I think, on a certain level. You know, there's always rate limits involved. You know, try to do 1 trillion tokens a second. Get it? You will not be allowed with one account. With many, maybe. So anyway, yeah, that's where that's at. So as far as my AI Studio usage goes, I haven't been hitting that hard. But I do, you know, there's a thing where if you try to use Google models or Google services with this stuff, you will be forced into a paid plan where you have a 0 in your, it's sort of like a free plan. You'll be forced into a free plan, and then if you go over a certain limit, you'll be forced into a paid plan. So you have to kind of like, it's just the way they've decided to do it. I kind of get it, you know, I don't like it, but it's, you know, it's their way of like, if I want to go out of the free tier, like, oh, by the way, that's my language client number in case you wanted it. Yeah, so if I want to go out of the free tier, I've been on this thing since 2024. I would have to set up billing, and then I could go over my limits and whatever. The rate limit right now is not huge. Like you get 250,000 tokens per minute. So that's, you know, 4 minutes is 1 million. And then you get requests per day, I believe. Is that what that stands for? Yeah, peak requests per day. And so this is what I've done, but I think you get 20. So yeah, something like that. Then you get charts. Hey, cool. View in charts. So let's view in charts. Here's our charts. You can see, you know, it gives a rough, I don't know why these are line graphs. They should be. They're really just data points. You know, I guess it shows a trend. But, you know, there's a limit. And look, it lets you go over a little bit once you do. You know, whatever. Don't go over the limit. So I guess the number is 5. Weird. You can put 250 and here 20. So yeah, limits. They're not huge. They're very conservative. I understand them. I don't like them because I want to use this free stuff all day. But it does mean you can hit it once in a while for a request for, like, you know, translate this thing, convert this web page to Markdown, whatever, and it'll just, you know, you can kind of hit that kind of thing with it. More likely, you should use tools to convert, you know, HTML to Markdown. You know what I mean? But what I mean is you can send it a request once in a while, and they won't kill you for it. So again, if you're spreading things around, some stuff to open router, some things to the new portal, other things to other places. Like I may swap one of these models that I have here for the new portal models, although the new portal models, there's only one free one, and it doesn't list when you go to this list here because it doesn't list everything. It only lists like a certain number. But yeah, here's the dialog, by the way, if you want to see that. It gives you this. I gotta bring this one up. So set auxiliary for vision. So this little dialog pops up. Wait a minute for it to load all the models. And eventually it will load all the models. But see, it's loading the models. There we go. And now you get like, here's the open router models. Here's your Olama models. Here's your LM Studio, your new portal. You see a new portal. It shows you, look at this. Check this out. Open router, new portal. Open router, new portal. What's going on? Is new portal like just open router in disguise? You gotta wonder. But anyway, they do have on here, you've got some open router Pareto code, by the way. Probably a good choice if you're doing code. Check out the Pareto code router. It's not a model, it's a router, and it routes to coding models. So hopefully it does good routing, but it's, you want to build up these good routers, help out. It doesn't, I imagine it also reduces costs. It is using models like DeepSeek and others, so it's not going straight to Sonnet and Opus every time. It's really seems to be curated for a balance of cost and usefulness. So check it out. Anyway, then you got new portal. So yeah, new portal, that goes away, but then a new model shows up somewhere in here, or a step fund model, or but I don't see the new model in here at the moment. And that's the funny part, because yeah, that's the one that shows up if you want to select the default model. You can select the free new model. I also hooked up OMLX, as you can see, as a custom provider, and it doesn't fetch all the models that it could for this list. It could be fetching more, so I don't know why it's only showing the one. It might be because I put it in there in my config, but it can actually fetch like all the models that you've put in its folder, or given it shortcuts, or I should say, I use symbolic links to the folders of my other models, and it finds the MLX ones and lists them in its interface and so on. Maybe because I don't have the server running. Well, there you go. So if I go over here and then I go to OMLX, maybe it will show it now that I've started the server. So wait for these. Yeah, because it basically goes, I think, what it's waiting for is it's gathering all the models from all the providers so it can instantly list them quickly. And I believe that's true. I'd rather it just listed the providers, and then when you went to one, then it loaded that one. You just wait for it, and it would take 1, 2, 3, or 1/8 of the time or whatever. So interesting. OMLX still isn't showing, even though I did start the server. Interesting. So yeah, it should be listing its models, but whatever. It has its own web-based admin panel, and you can see it's actually got, it thinks that's active, so I want to kind of like unload it. One way to unload it is to stop the server. Another way is to maybe unload it from here somehow. Models. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. OMLX gives you a nice little interface and everything, and it even has a little login. I used a fake API key, which you do. You can make up your own for it. It has model settings and so on. So each one can be set up. That's my loaded one. So I can click that to unload it. There we go. Now it's unloaded. And so now my memory is no longer being pressured quite as much. Let's take a look at the memory situation, and you can see it is pretty good. I'm halfway to 64, just about. So I've got about 30 something gigs of spare room to load models and run them, but I don't when I don't have to. If I can use, again, models that are a little quicker at Open Router or other places. So I also have the Copilot, and again, you have Grok Code Fast 1 as an option here for different things. So you have choices, but yeah. So again, also the other thing you might want to know about Hermes or not is that there are so many bloody front ends for it. Here's that's the Hermes agent like standard UI, and then there's this one, the Hermes agent app, that is another guy, and it's pretty good, and it gives you like some things. There's some things that it can do, which is good. Schedules, got my daily report and such. Nothing private here. And then you've also got Hermes Web UI, which once it's running, you run the Web UI app, which is separate from Hermes, and it gives you this interface. There's a chat. There's your, there's our jobs there. There's your Kanban. So it's got a little nicer Kanban display. So here's the one that's running. Look at it. It gives you a little more detail. Pretty cool. Zip down to the bottom. So here right now it's still doing stuff, loading the first batch. Several files are truncated. So it's still busy, fixing itself up, picking up after its own mess. So yeah, there's some of that. And you can see over here, the dependencies are listed or whatever, the Kanban in general. Pretty cool. So yeah, it's got a nice overall interface. Again, I don't know how to get out of this once I've opened it. Oh, back to board right there. So a little back arrow would be nice, something visible and, I don't know, yellow. I don't know what color, but yeah, it's pretty cool. I like the layout here is pretty neat. But you can also do some searching of stuff. So when you build up a lot of projects and things, here's your skills. They're all here, and you can just pick one. Ghosty theme, how to do that. Maybe I should share some of these with you. Here's a ghosty one I could share the world. Here's I started like make binary app on a Mac OS, like, from an existing app. And it kind of implied that was already a skill that it had. So maybe this actually came from Apple, came from Hermes. I didn't realize that. Or maybe I did make this. I don't even know at this point. But there is metadata, so you can check it and see, oh, look, I am the author, apparently. Package a standalone binary with proper structure and icon. So apparently I did that. So yeah, that's a nice thing. I just had some binaries I'd written or whatever programs, and I was like, well, it'd be nice to have this as an app I can quit. And the thing I made, oh, did I show you the thing I made? I'll show you the thing I made with it, but I'll get it in a second. Hold on. Need Xcode, and it gets annoying when Xcode is open because it's constantly asking for MCP permission. But let's open it anyway. I'll show you what I built with it. Or I had agents help me build with it. Nothing too fancy. It wasn't I don't think I used Hermes per se to do it. I used, I believe I ended up using GitHub Copilot for Xcode to do it. So yeah, if you like that, which I do, but yeah, GitHub Copilot for Xcode's pretty cool. Can't lie, it's a pretty neat thing. The way it integrates is all right. Could be a little, the way it follows the window around is a little annoying, but anyway, I did this thing called PunkCam, which was actually AV Video Wall, which is like a demo. Piece of demo code I found somewhere, probably on an Apple, developer site. So this thing is just demo how to use the camera. GitHub Copilot just wants to MCP with this thing all day. So, but I had to build it out as a, like it already existed as an app, a regular command line utility, and I just built it out as an app that I could use. Oop, it's going to interfere with the camera a little bit here. Hold on. There we go. So this is what it does. Let's see if you can see that on OBS or not. Yeah, there it is. Okay, sorry, it's behind things. But this is all it does, is it gives me a window that does this. And so, I built this a while ago, just so I'd have something like this in case I didn't have OBS running and I needed to have my face on the screen. But then I was like, well, now that I've gotten it to, bring this up to date with all the latest APIs and get rid of the deprecated crap, and make it into an app that I can actually use the quit on and stuff. And I called it PunkCam because why not? And I cleaned up the menus and I thought, oh, I'm getting errors when I build or run pertaining to the menus. Did I do that? And then I started a new project, ran it, and it gave the same errors. So it was like, not my fault. just crap that is somehow automatically there because of Apple app being Apple or something. I don't know what, but the nibs are messed up. The menu nibs are messed up. So, but what I was interested in then later was like, well, wait, what can I do? Scroll wheel stuff where it zooms in and out. So I asked it to add that. Did that, no problem. There I am. Hello. And then I asked it to like, give me a thing where I can use the right mouse button to pan. And so I got it to do that. And then I was like, oh, give me a hand icon too when I pan. So it did that. But it gave me the wrong icon. So I was like, I'll switch it up. I'll do it myself. But whatever, it's fine. So yeah, it does all this for me. So that was a thing that would have taken me, more hours of crap time to make. That's just a handy thing I needed to have around. And now I can quit it. Yay. So anyway, that was one thing that I got help with building through, that actually was a great case of seeing how MCP through Xcode could use that documentation I mentioned before and figure out all the deprecated stuff and then clean it up and turn it into an app. And I did have to help it along here and there. I got rid of the extra main function and turned it into an if-def situation instead, and made it cleaner, I guess you'd say. It just kind of the way I would do it. It's not necessarily the way anybody else would, but I just wanted to have it a single main function, have it all be, straightforwardly written and so on. So anyway, very fun, very simple thing. But now I'm looking at the next large phase of doing, FretPet, which is going to be a lot more involved and have a lot more stuff. But at the same time, it's the same thing, just at a different scale. So, I just have to take more notes and be a little more careful and not break things as often. And the fact that I have already a working app that it can try to run, and when it doesn't run, we know, hey, you introduced a bug, and I can get it to write in from the get-go. I can have it include tests for everything that is written. So that'll be very cool, and I will definitely have you in on that when I'm working on it. Sometimes I don't like to do the live streams while I'm working because it's distracting and I forget to pay attention to what I should be paying attention to. So anyway, yeah, how to do a screenshot. I had some difficulties doing a screenshot, so I was like, well, I should give it some extra instructions in case there's issues, especially when you're doing it remotely. You can't take a screenshot from Hermes unless the thing you're using it from, like the app that it's running inside of or whatever, has permission to take screenshots. So yeah, you can't just go take screenshots. So that's kind of one of the things is if you want your AIs to read the screen and such, you have to go through a lot of processes. Another thing I found, this is a big hassle with Hermes, is that yeah, it'll be doing stuff and then it'll be asking, pop-ups will be coming up asking for permissions, and if you're not around to answer them, then it'll just time out and go on and try a different way. And what if there is no other way? Eventually it'll give up, but I'd rather it gave up, as soon as it hit those kinds of obstacles, it would give up right away. That would make me happier. Also, yesterday, I'm checking the network situation now, but yeah, the issue I had yesterday, it turns out it was I had a loose Ethernet cable, and so everything was acting up weirdly on the network, and I couldn't get SSH and stuff, and I'm like, what is going on? And then I had to check and see if there was firewalling on my router, and I'm like, no, not necessarily. Should I be able to connect over Wi-Fi as readily as I can connect over Ethernet and plus Wi-Fi? What does it matter? So I was, I don't know, stuck on that for a while yesterday. Anyway, I got the Thinkyhead right site rebuild project going on. So yeah, a lot of things I've been building, a lot of skills, just kind of getting them ready. JQ patterns, I don't know. I think you could just look this up in the man page, but we do extraction of JSON so often enough that having a primer on JQ can't hurt. But if you assume that your LLM already knows JQ, you can kind of skip this, but it's there. I don't know if it calls upon it. I haven't noticed that it pulled this skill out at any particular point, so it's there if it's needed, but I don't think it'll use it. When it uses skills can sometimes be a question. Again, if you ask Hermes, it'll tell you, yeah, I use skills all the time and I'm great at choosing them. But if you have to really pick a model that's good at choosing skills and also knows what they are and so on. So having a model that picks skills well, again, you'll find out through experience. So yeah, I've got things like software development stuff. Spike, what is that? I don't know. Valid an idea before build. Would I apply this? I don't know. Should I? When I feel out an idea before committing to a real build. So what is a build in that sense? What is GSD system? Yeah, what are we talking about here? So again, these things can be very domain specific, but that's what you want. What do these words mean in a given domain? Make that clear. I saw that Matt Pocock was talking about giving these things a glossary, or some kind of vocabulary to work with as a starting point. And I think that's a very good idea. Like, give them a glossary that they can refer to. Give them a, whatever you have to, a dictionary and a encyclopedia and a thesaurus and a wiki and a blog and whatever else to get the information that they need in a rather compact way. Like, here's the polymarket skill. I didn't write this. It's, but it seems very concise. Like, the skills that I make tend to end up being longer and less concise. So what I need to do is kind of like, and this thing has skill authoring, has all that built in. So you can kind of ask it, hey, review my skills and make sure that they're not stupid and noisy. Get a smart model to do that for you. And it'll be worth it because it'll make the dumb models smarter, hopefully. Again, you always wonder if they don't speak quite the same language. This model understands it, but now the model that I didn't use to make the skill has trouble using it. It doesn't use the same idioms, whatever. How to talk to my, computers through SSH, which, they have keys on them, so I can easily connect from one to another without logging in. Very nice. How to do FS notes, an app I like to use for my daily reports and such. You can see I got a daily report today. Woo, it worked. I just had to switch to a model that I could trust to be awake and ready to go, and not rate limit me when I'm trying to do my reports. I didn't check if I got it into Discord today. It was making a little bit of a mess in Discord previously, but yeah, it looks like it got all 6 in there today, and it did it correctly. Good. I was warning it. I was like, it looks like you create a thread, and if you try to post into the thread right away, it doesn't really exist yet. So the server will say error 403. You can't do that. There's nowhere to go, or whatever. So you have to wait until the thing exists. So I had to throw in a delay and stuff. Anyway, I'm getting a little bit of like, I'm making these reports really mostly for myself to help me choose what I'm going to work on and pay attention to today. And it always gets me to look at a couple of older ones that I haven't looked at in a while. It could have been made into a link. I'll have to remind it that the oldies section isn't getting proper links. But yeah, and it gets me to look at older stuff and fix them up. It gets me to maybe do 2 or 3 extra issues a day and look at them that I wouldn't have otherwise checked. And also, I'm fascinated by the older ones. Like, did we finally get that? What made us forget to read it, or what made me miss it? What was I doing that week that I missed this particular issue? So, generally speaking, I just need to scrub old stuff, and the bot is helping me with that. So, again, it's a great little tool for that sort of thing. Oh, I see what's happening here. It's only doing issues that are greater than 20,000 because that's what I told it to do. I gave it like a regex for that. I was like, well, ones that start with 1 are not going to be good, but as you can see, we have some older ones that are still around from 2020. Holy crap. Next oldest bugs. So yeah, this little report is cool. I love that it gives me this. And then I have my other projects report, no activity. That's pretty much the report I get every day. So bye, gone. But yeah, so I'm definitely going on with writing notes. I'm keeping an eye on trying to write up a little journal as I do this stuff and as I learn, and it helps me to be able to express this stuff better for you guys, because this new technology requires not necessarily a new way of thinking, but being aware of how words work, how we express ideas, how clarity comes into being, what context even means, and what it means to align with context. Like, I've been thinking a lot about like the fact that we say you are a helpful agent. Well, shouldn't it really be in the first person, like from the agent's point of view, and have it be like, I am a helpful agent. Yes, I am, and I am doing this, and this is my goal, as opposed to being very much kind of this third person or second person view of the agent. It should always be, the agent should be identifying with the things it's doing. So, maybe we do that too. I think that'll be a shift in probably not too far from now, where we will be writing our prompts from the point of view of the agent as opposed to the point of view of the user. That'll be an interesting shift. Anyway, a lot of thoughts on these things while I'm playing with these tools. Oh yeah, by the way, that's the MLX dashboard. I think I showed you that before. Yeah, it gives you this web dashboard. There it is. Yeah, models, bench. I just had it open in another big window, and it looked cooler in the larger when it's in tall form. Let's take a quick look, see where we're at with my ingestion process. Still a little on the stuck side. Again, this is not a huge task what it's doing, but it does involve some file reading and cleaning up and dealing with the LLM wiki and so on. And using that, and it is using that skill. It is reading the doc files. So yeah, I think a good first step, if you were going to do this sort of thing, is it can't hurt to put Doxygen comments on all your stuff, and maybe even enlist an agent to put Doxygen comments on all your stuff. There are some tools for automating some of that. And if you have an editor like VS Code, it can automate that, in line as you're typing, using just auto completion with your autocomplete provider. You can get a lot of your Doxygen comments completed, and that'll somewhat help when the code needs to be scraped later. It'll have more context again, and they tend to be pretty short, these comments, but some of them can be pretty long. Again, it all comes down to how much detail you want to put in. I want to put in as much detail as I can use to pull out and produce documentation and for the website and make it more thorough and cleaner. I'm looking at a lot of websites these days, like even the Hermes website, others that, their documentation is nice and clean. And I'm like, yeah, ours isn't bad, but it's definitely, we need more images and other diagrams and things. And this is a place where this is really going to help. Like, I can go back and forth with this tool and have it help me with a lot of that stuff as I jump in, which is soon. I'm jumping into a few things at once, but the website conversion is definitely one thing that's happening on the back. I'm building up the skills for that. And basically, I think I'm going to start out by just saying, okay, let's just go for it. Put in an afternoon, day, 2 days, set up the agents to just say, here's the new site, empty mostly, with a few things as examples of how things should kind of lay out. And, take a page from the old website and bring it in. And then we'll just work on that one thing. We'll work on that one page and that one template. We'll get it all sorted out and settled. We'll have a rule for that. We'll have a workflow for that. We'll be able to apply it to the next page and the next page and so on until finally I can say, okay, now do two at a time, and hopefully it can pull in 2 at a time, and I can be like, okay, this is starting to work. And then I can say, now do the whole thing or carry on. I have everything in version control, so it's very easy to follow. And again, also we can commit everything, and we can say, okay, now that I've committed it, go back and look at your work through the commits and, see what you think, and clean up things that look like crap, or, bring in the next model and have it review it and so on. So again, I'm the human. I do the ultimate final review. That's my job. But these tools that bring us up to a certain level, a certain point, are so helpful. Just in frameworking things out, and fleshing them out later, and getting all the dirty details and the aesthetics and that sort of thing. That comes down to me. And it looks like it's nearly done. Now I have all the data. Let me check the index for the FretPet. Then I'll update all the pages efficiently. Okay, so it's getting there. Again, this is which model is running this part is, boom. Right now, DeepSeek V4 Pro, okay, is going for it. Now that's a Pro model, so I assume it's costing me a little extra, but again, you can see the new chart. This is something they just introduced recently. It was this new look I like, and you can choose these as your You can just go in and be like, oh, I like this as my blah blah model. So this makes the interface a little easier. I don't know that again, these are hard to see though. It's like you want it to be, you know, stand out, you know, in your face. Like, what is this for? You know, what is this attached to? Like, light up the whole box when I'm using it as my, you know, model for summary or whatever. Just make it obvious that it's my model for summary. I like that it is keeping track of my usage though, a little bit, input output. Um, Hermes is really great with its metadata and keeping track of like when you last used a skill and stuff like that. Things that don't have any real effect on your context, but are really useful for its management of things like, oh well, these are stale skills. Let's put them away for now, and so on. So yeah, it's pretty decent. You know, why does it matter if you guys can always pull out the skills you need without any extra hardship? And why does it matter if you archive the skills that haven't been used in a while? I know I'm being that guy. I wonder why it matters if it doesn't matter. Um, so anyway, yeah, DeepSeek V4 Pro. How do I know it's used as my model for this or that? Oh, there it is. It's starred. It's got a little main star next to it, which, you know, in the nearly the same color as the thing that you can barely read that says Open Router. And yeah, again, the style aesthetic here is a little on the style over substance kind of like readability, usability front. But I understand it, you know, what they're doing. There are other themes you can imagine using. I don't know. I'm forever going to be a critic. What can I say? Not only of this, but of you and your behavior. Stop it. So yeah, show auxiliary models. Do I care now? Now that I know I can do this. Oh, buddy, I want to use this one as my web extraction model, since I haven't picked one yet. There you go. Oh, look, it makes it purple. Neat. Same color as reasoning and title generation. So if I want to make CoBuddy free, you know, my web extract model, that's fine. I don't know what size of a context it has. It doesn't tell me here. Like the kind of information you really want to know, like, is like scattershot. I would really like to see these things in one place, better places. So anyway, oh, I was also going to mention Scarf. So while we're talking about all the propagating many more Hermes interfaces, and by the way, there's even more. Oh, look, there's a new one. I'll get it. Let's grab the latest Scarf. So Scarf is kind of cool because it very easily lets you connect to your remote instances, which yesterday, without my Ethernet cable working or whatever it was, I couldn't connect to my remote instances, but now I have them all, I think, ready to go. So I should be able to connect to, say, apropos. There you go. And it's just set up, not doing much. It's running Instant High 3 Preview. Actually, I'm not even doing anything with it, but it's used 57 cents for something. Then you got, each of these menus actually doesn't open in the same window. It opens a new window. So get used to it. But yeah, that's the interface they chose. And then you've got this one. So they're all there, and Sharky as well. So all three laptops. Oh, Sharky, are you there? I might have let that one go to sleep or something. Sharky's just being a bitch. Maybe that I haven't set it up properly. The other ones were working pretty well the other day, but we looked up Sharky. Boop. Nah. Let's see, hold on a second. SSH me at Sharky. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it took it a minute. All right. So that's an M1, 13-inch M1. So one of my favorite models of computer that Apple ever made. Nice and compact, and it has a touch bar, like it or not. But yeah, so you can see this one has got a lot of the same stuff, but more other stuff. And so I'm kind of like, I can't sacrifice this one because it's really cool too, you know, and it's got, again, the activity. Like, of course, we're not going to see much on Sharky, but if we look at the local one, let's put that away. Boop. Let's say we just look at the local one for speed. But if we look at activity, I think this actually always takes a little while. There we go. But you can see it's done like each and every little individual call or turn is a separate entry in this. See, a lot of them were done at this time. It shows you the Kanban in its own layout. It's kind of a layout for Kanban. When you click on one, there's its own layout for this. And you can see, I like that it lays these things out a little cleaner. The actual state of the thing is a little harder to suss out. By the way, this comment field down here does not mean you're commenting and talking to the LLM. It just means you're adding a comment to the thing, which I don't know whether it gets picked up. You can say it's complete or blocked, archive it, whatever. But apparently this one's running, and I've got like the UI is a little weird. Okay, there we go. So that's cool. This is being ingested, number whatever, ingest API docs. This is pretty good. Deploy workers. So it's doing that, done, deploying workers. Cool, I like it. Yeah, we're done with most of that process. Cool. So it does give you, all these give you a chat. You know, you can choose this one for some reason always assumes that something's wrong with my model, but it's not. It's fine. Like, I put it in with other tools, they're fine. They're fine. So stop complaining. So whatever. If I say keep open router or use DeepSeek, is it going to change anything if I do both? Either? I don't know. Check that. But anyway, so you got your agent memory, you got your curator. How to do a brain transplant was one of the things. Skills, again, it gives you a different view of skills. The other thing it tells you is like 3 new, 1 changed since you last looked. Oh, cool. Which ones? No clue. It doesn't show you. It doesn't highlight them in the list. It just tells you that. And then you say mark as seen. I'm going to say I saw this message, but I didn't see the ones that changed. So I didn't really see them at all. So anyway, there's cool stuff on the hub. Not as many skills as I would necessarily hope at this point. You'd think there'd be more multiplying there, but number of people who play around and never contribute as many more than who do. So I don't expect, a flood, but we'll see as things go on. There'll be better ones. I've got all these connected, as you can see. I'm looking at doing IRC next as well, although it isn't listed here. Because my bots, when I put them on Telegram, they can't talk to each other. Not the way I set it up anyway. There may be other ways to do that, but the way I set it up, they can't talk to each other. So I'm going to make a little more direct thing where they can just address each other as needed. And either maybe that'll just be straight SSH, or I'll find another tool to do it. But I need some tool for them to be able to signal each other quickly on the same network or not. So yeah, there's cool stuff though. There's different messaging gateways. I've got them all turned on at the moment. Nobody's talking to my bot on Discord, which is fine. Probably cause some mayhem if you did. I don't always have it running, but if you address my bot, it'll try to help you with some issue or whatever, and then it'll try to build up its memories and so on. So I'm surprised there hasn't been much engagement or interest in this technology on the Discord for Marlin, but I think a lot of it is that we're Luddites. We like the smell of solder and electronics and like our basements and stuff. And this new technology is crazy, and we don't trust it. I don't blame you for some reasons, but on the other hand, I am getting things done with it. In spite of its being a big old mess of different tools, Pi, Hermes, open code, Codex, you name it. There's so many things out there right now. Which ones do you even use? Refresh, please. Cool, it's going. Only one to do left. So I'd say, generally speaking, I'm finding them to be useful, but I don't. As I keep reminding people, I'm not letting them go run rampant on Marlin code. Not even like the Copilot that GitHub provides. It doesn't, more often than I think I've closed more of its PRs or reviews than I've accepted, because it's typically wrong, and it's just because it doesn't have the context of our code base. It doesn't understand it. So pulling the stuff into a wiki, training it, very important aspect of this whole thing. Anyway, at this point, me and one lone coder and other people have been, ranting about where the state of coding is with AI. And I think that, for me, it's just a tool. Again, it's just like you take the autocomplete of the past and just accelerate that and give it that much more ability to do, you know, take part, and you can autocomplete a whole bunch of things into existence. Then you can kind of like whittle those down, and the real test is, you know, how coherent is it, you know, and is it really adhering to what you want? And sometimes it comes down to the fact that you just haven't expressed it well, and you look at the output and then look at what it was using as its input, and you can see, sometimes you can see why it gave you the output it did. It just didn't, you didn't tell it enough, you didn't give it enough context or whatever. So yeah, it comes down to, I'm going to have to tell it every single line that it's supposed to do. Maybe it does come down to you have to describe every single line. Maybe my idea of decomposing everything into a database does mean that every line is going to have a line, and that's going to have a comment that every line that describes every line, and not only just what that line is doing individually, but how it fits into the larger context. And maybe there's going to be a novel for every bloody line. Maybe that's what it's going to take. But at some point, that information, that knowledge that we kind of take for granted because we kind of hold it in the back of our minds and sort of have an idea. We sort of know how things fit. When we get into the thing, we'll remember, oh yeah, that. Oh yeah, that detail. Oh yeah, that detail. The models, they don't have the advantage of having everything right at hand, the old details or whatever that can pop in when needed. They don't just pop in, but it would be neat to have a thing where what you need just pops in. And that's kind of like the way we do it, is we sort of energize our neurons and say, we need a thing. And then all these little minions in our heads go out and go, oh, we'll energize the things that generally lead in that direction. And eventually it'll make itself known. And, out of the forest comes the thing you were looking for. And it just sort of says, hello. And so you can work with it. LLMs don't quite have that. They have to go through a process of calling on a tool to do it. So this is where my idea comes in. It's like, does the tool give you exactly what you need when you need it? And does it give you the relevance that you need when you need it? And the context that you need? And can you hone in on can you pull one line out of a file and know what it means? Because you're like me, I can see the whole file in front of me. I can kind of get what it means. I don't need to look at everything. It's fuzzier as I go further away. Can it work with that, having that fuzziness? It cannot. It has to have things kind of explicit. So you have to build that up for it. But it can be somewhat fuzzy. You can be like, this does this in this context. And it can then be like, how much do I need to know about that? And it can go out and find out the details it needs. But, about what? Does it need to know the color, the shape, the size, the location, the name, its aliases? What does it need to know? So all of these kinds of things come down to like, retrieval. It is that retrieval augmented generation crap. Yeah, we're still coming back to retrieval augmented generation to a large extent. What we're going to be doing, putting code in databases, is, and turning it into something that's chunked up like that, is giving that retrieval, taking that retrieval problem down to fundamental. Now is like, it just wants it, it gets it, it comes up. The thing it wants emerges from the forest, or at least the best 5 candidates show up, and then it can pick among those best 5 candidates. And so what you kind of want is something that does work a little bit on the vague, fuzzy side. You could think of Bart Costco's fuzzy logic concepts, and the idea of like, well, you just sort of like, it has an area, and once you overlap enough of them, of these things that are like the Venn diagram of the information you're looking for, even though they're all fuzzy, it comes into focus because you have enough of them that it narrows it down enough. And that's really the thing too, is it's a narrowing problem, to the extent that we're also trying to find the meaning of a word in an LLM. You can use that same power to narrow down what the output should be. And the output isn't necessarily the next token. You want an output that is like what you really want to do is like the chain of thought sort of concept a little bit. Before you output the code, output a description of the code, then output a more detailed description of the code in English, that says this is what it'll do, and it'll loop this many times, and it'll be checking this variable, and then you spread that out into comments, and then you fill in the code where the comments were. That kind of thing. You make a structure, and it's all just full of language, and the code is not yet written. Only the language, the structure, like, is written in advance. And you could even say, to a certain extent, like, this database that I would build, because you can chunk out pieces of functions inside of that, you could say, you can sort of see the meaning semantically. You could follow that big empty skeleton that has all the code removed, just the references to the things in the database, to the fields or the parts that are supposed to be there, and it'll be effectively comments describing what's there. And you could say, and you could split it up. You could say, here's a comment that says, here lives a function that, implements a dragon or whatever. And you don't know all the details of it, but if you needed to know part of it, you could say, well, show me, give me a longer description. Say, well, this function takes these parameters and it gives this return value. Well, give me more detail. And you could say, well, it does this by multiplying by 3 and adding 2, or whatever it might do. There are really cool ways that you could imagine breaking things down in a gestalt way, in a meaningful way, and getting that all, sorted out in the structure of the thing. And then the AI has a much easier time working with that thing. Again, this mess of code that we work with, and trying to always bring the AI up every morning and say, look at your index, and now try to understand what I'm doing. Like, I feel like, it really has to kind of be watching you and observing and working with you in a way. And you need both. That requires not just an LLM, but also something else, something that is sort of like an attendee, you could say. Every time a change comes up, it considers the change. It tries to learn from the change. It tries to understand the change in the context of the thing. And it builds up kind of like, it could just build up a log, effectively. Every change you make throughout your code every day, instead of just going in as a commit message, also gets momentarily evaluated by your LLM and absorbed into its matrix to understand what's going on and what's changing and why, and maybe to build up a better understanding of things overall. Kind of have it do little dribs and drabs as you go. You can do these big ingestions. That's useful, I think, but to give it that initial vocabulary and context. But then you need to work in these piecemeal ways while still retaining that context, or parts of that context, the important parts that matter within that thing. Yeah, it's a very tricky problem people are working on. It's, forget the problem of consciousness. If it emerges, it emerges. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We don't know. We can't cause it. We don't know what causes it, per se. What makes red red? We don't know. It's because it's the same color as other red things. That's why it's red. But ultimately, like, the question becomes, how do we get things into the context that get us exactly the result we want? We get it to do what we want instead of hallucinating some crap, trying to fake it. These problems keep coming up again and again. Where are we at? Compression model. Is doing it. Use a larger one. It keeps telling me I'm using ring. Why am I using ring? Didn't mean to use ring. Is that just from now? I wish these things were dated. Damn it. 15 minutes, 30 minutes. What's running? What's going on? Like, this is supposed to give me insight. Like, they're supposed to be like, what's my session? What's going on? When did it finish? Is it done 16 minutes ago? Is it working? Like, there's, I think if you look at certain things, it'll show like that it's still running. Gateway status running. Active sessions. It says I have 2 active sessions. Moment. Is one of them in Ghosty? It's not. Hermes dashboard. Does that count as a session? Does it itself count as a session? What other sessions may be happening? How do I know these are active? So many questions. Let's take a look at the logs. Let's see what happened at the end here. Thread, provider, open router, DeepSeek. Okay, that was when? 7:46. What time is it now? Let's take a look. It's about 7:47. That was very recent. Kanban show completed. That usually means that it updated the Kanban board in some way. Maybe it's just, I don't know. You can see this all started yesterday, so that's where all the trouble began. So let me see if here, where is it at? Sometimes if it's still working, I can go here and just tell. Preparing Kanban show. So yeah, it's doing something now. It's starting the agent up again. So if it gets this keyboard interrupt, which I hope they will bloody solve soon, it's not my fault, man. I didn't do anything. I swear. What is this? Keyboard interrupt crap. Is it just because of the, is this like the provider just not answering is what causes that? I don't know. So anyway, either way, it does a control C of some, I think it sends a control C to Hermes. That's what happens there. I think it's intentional. I think it's like a timer situation going on in the, not necessarily in this UI, but in the way that it's running the runner. I think there's somewhere it control C, sends a control C signal to itself. But run 36, 8 prior attempts, all reclaimed. Look at that. Let me move fast. First, load the LLM wiki skill. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. And it keeps complaining about the compression model. Let me check that. Pretty sure I'm not using that as the compression model. Am I? Oh, I am. Really? Okay, let's not use that. Which one? I should use Super 120 A12B, right? So where are you? Use as compression model. Where is it? There it is, 120B. Free. We'll use that one as our compression. There. I don't know if I have to save here or anything like that. I don't think so. Yep, there it is. I think that has enough of a context. Let's take a look. Where were I? Right. Looking at new research issues like I care. Give me that keyword interrupt stuff, man. Explain it to me. Okay, so here we are once again. OSS 20B, 120B free. It does have a 131K context. I need a bigger context. Let's see. I think we're gonna need a bigger context. Was I using Nematron maybe? That had a better context for us. That's a little better. I can work with Nematron, super free. Let's make it that. Nemotron, please. Shouldn't have to compress that often, but sometimes you do. Okay, so now it's both our compression and our session search, because it has a relatively good size context. Not a trillion, anything like that. I think High3 Preview might have like something crazy, like, I might be wrong, but as I recall, oh, it's only got 262. Okay, so that's good enough. 256K, as it were, context is. I don't want to reset all these to DeepSeek. So anyway, having done that, again, let's see what our usage is looking like at the moment. And voila, 1 hour. Yeah, we're still hitting those things, and I've spent $3. So not bad, not bad. Again, this is not official Marlin work. This is for my own like edification. Do something in a safe space, safe area, a sandbox before I start applying any of this stuff to a serious project like Marlin. I want to make sure that it is safe and good. So as you can see, I'm definitely lining up all the free models. Anyway, I'm gonna go get some food as I usually do at this time. So thanks for hanging out and checking out this stuff I'm working on. I will post this over to YouTube for you all. There's so much to learn with all these bloody Hermes web UIs popping up, my notes, my user profile, my profiles, my to-dos. There's a to-dos even. Maybe I'll start using that. But yeah, each Hermes thing, it's called Hermes Web UI, but it's actually called Hermes Agent when you download it. I'm not installing 50 things called Hermes Agent that are each a different app. Thank you very much. I already have enough. There's this one, the desktop app is already called Hermes Agent, made by Fatah. So yeah, or Fatah. So anyway, thank you, Fatah. As usual, check all the links in the description below. Help me out if you can. Help out the Marlin project. We are about to release 2.1.3 any day now, any minute. And after that, there's a big push for rewrite refactor. So get on board. If you like this stuff, come join, hang out. We'll talk about it. Figure out ways to wrangle these things so they don't produce slop. I really like the fact that we can get as far as we can and produce useful workflows that don't require thinking. Now let's see if we can get some that actually that leverage our thinking and at least do allow us to produce really well spec'd and software that's maintainable and we can extend and grow over time. And we'll see if what I end up with in this FretPet thing is something that is a big mess, or will it be actually well organized and help me move the project forward. And we'll see as time goes on whether it is maintainable. This isn't going away. I'm not changing the way I'm working on on code per se. I still go in and type and understand what's happening. This is just changing again. It's just accelerating what I can do around the code and for the quality of the process. So yeah, I think this is a very exciting time. If you're into this stuff, this AI stuff, and you're following other creators who are doing things, who keep alluding to projects they're working on, you're not actually seeing what they're working on, well, this will be a different change of pace for you. I'm going to be showing off what I'm really working on, and warts and all, costs and all, being poor, being where we'll see. It's obviously, if I'm going to be selling products for thousands a month or whatever, we'll see. On the App Store, great. $50 a month on tokens is not a big deal. But if this is all a hobby and I'm not going to ever finish anything, we need to know that. And rein in these costs. But I'm willing to take that chance that what I build will be worth, and I'll make back what I spent on tokens. If I spend like $500, I'm going to sell maybe 50 copies or something. So hopefully I get there. Anyway, yeah. So in the meantime, I got a Patreon. I've got GitHub sponsorship. You can buy me a coffee. Do help out, because times are tough for the open source world and for 3D printing and all these weird laws and stuff. But I'm doing my best to keep it alive and make it viable for the next generation. So anyway, love you all. See you soon. Bye.